Alright, so here we are entering the 7:15 turn, and we get some technological improvements coming ahead. But the world refuses to remain at peace. I'm not sure what the diplomatic effects are right now, but the events that came up, well, first of all, a French king died, a young, he was an absolute baby last turn, died. Some older uncle or something has taken the throne. But, and we also, the only other interesting thing I think in the monarchs and events, we got an excellent ruler, an excellent minister in Austria, very good at administration. We got another excellent minister who's really piss poor at something but better than his king. I'm giving a 1-point bonus. I don't remember who has it. Maybe Russia. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, that's where we're sitting in terms of all the economic events. But on the political events, here's where it comes interesting. We got two of them. The first one, and we got a revolt down here. The first one is a French king in Poland. A Bourbon or whatever has ascended to the Polish throne. This creates an interesting situation. First of all, the Risto events have, for the first time, really absolutely failed with this event. But Poland's put an entry in war, and a series of events seems to start being triggered here. Now, basically, France is given the first offer to pledge to defend Poland in any wars, and if they succeed, this can end up in Poland ending up in a kind of special vassal situation like the Habsburgs do for the Spaniards. Very interesting. At the beginning of the Grand Campaign, Russia and Austria each get free casus belli against the Poles. If Austria takes theirs, France gets a free casus belli against Lorraine. You can see how ugly this is all becoming. Now, out of all of this, Saxony will also join, pressing their own claim to the Polish throne. Remember, we had a Saxon king in Poland briefly, or previously. Well, Saxony will join in as an ally in this war and attack Poland. And France is able to actually annex Lorraine due to this war if they get a proper ending from it. Okay, well, if this war happens, and Poland wins with a level 3 victory, Lorraine can be annexed, Poland becomes a vassal, and the controller of Poland gets 50 victory points. If no one's willing to take the Polish throne, they lose the non-level 3, or they get the non-level 3 victory condition, which we'll mark to in a moment. But that's sort of the, okay, this wasn't established. If Poland loses a defeat, the Polish controller loses 15 victory points. Pretty good. This is if it's a level 3 defeat. And other people get free passage through Poland. And Russia and Austria, if they're in the war, get 50 points. Okay. In all other cases, though, Lorraine becomes a permanent vassal of France if France was the Polish controller and conquered it. And then after 5 turns, it'll actually be annexed. But the former controller of Lorraine gets a bonus on their diplomacy for Tuscany. I'm guessing there was a relationship between the royal family. The Polish controller loses the 15 victory points as if he had lost a war. Poland becomes neutral, but its diplomatic status is not restricted. It can be made a vassal by anyone at this point. In the other version, Poland becomes what it historically became, this kind of power vacuum. And you still get the free passage through Poland. So the other version, Poland can never go above subsidy. Basically, the veto, Librum Victorum or whatever, is established, which means Poland will never be of any value to anyone as long as the kingdom remains under those conditions. But in this neutral version, much of the same goes over, and Russia and Austria, if they're involved, only get 30 victory points instead of the 50 that they would have gotten. Okay, but there's one status that's not covered that seems quite likely in this circumstance, although I don't think it'll happen. But if there's no restriction for it, hey, you know, if the peace of if the peace below level 3 was imposed no matter what, if no war happens, nobody's going to declare war on France over this, right? So what I'm going to have to say is the intention here is that if no one opposes the French king taking the Polish throne, it becomes de facto as though they were completely victorious. Of course, they won't get the ability to slip into Lorraine, I don't think. That would require the war. But all the other factors, the 50 victory points, the permanent vassalage, are going to be in effect. Which to me says Austria and maybe Russia have to jump into this war. And they may have to make alliances to bring people like England into the war. Question, how does Turkey feel about this? Turkey would like a chunk of Poland. Now here's the problem. Everybody who declares war on Poland from this has to agree, at least all the major players. Other people could kind of join in, I think. Let me see. Let's see how it's worded. All the major and minor powers declaring war due to the event have to be willing to make an alliance, which to me means, Saxony, Austria, Russia. Those guys have to join in an alliance. But if Turkey wants to get a chunk of Poland, this would be their opportunity to do so. And, we may well see a situation of that status along those lines. Austria almost certainly is going to go into war. Russia, well, they've got this painful war with Astrakhan, but they would like to show their support for this, and they would like to grab a chunk of Poland if they can. A piece of level 3 would mean a province or two for them, even if Austria's in it. So I think this is going to pan out as this big giant war again, bringing France back into war. And now here's the question. Does somebody ally with England and bring them in on it? Is Spain ready? Spain looks like they may be. I don't think they're really interested, though. Spain is probably at this point saying, I want to see if I can clear up my problems here. England also would like to, but I feel like they have to show their support for this, or else countries like Austria and Russia are going to say, we'll let France win. We'll fight for second. If you're not willing to risk your own position, because you are almost guaranteed to get second as England. The way the victory points have fallen out, they're currently ahead. Only the Austrians are even close, and I think they're going to try to push that position. Now, England really does not want a war this turn, but we'll see. War it is. Let's see how it breaks out. Russia and Austria agreed to work together on this one. Allow Austria to declare war first so they get the Saxons in alliance. The reason this is important, well, it's really not too big a deal, but Austria gets more advantage out of the Saxons, and the Russians were willing to say, well, the Saxons aren't really going to be of any importance to me. They're more of a liability out there than anything else. The English agreed to go in. Probably an iffy choice. Their initial feelings were definitely against it. They lost so much last war, they've got so much to clean up, but the convincing argument to them was, you got the Portuguese and the Swedes sitting on your track, they would be damn helpful. Well, unfortunately neither of them came in, but a lot of other things did. We got a lot of these are just expeditionary corps type situations. For example, the Palatinate, Baden. I don't want to risk these guys by bringing them fully into the war. The Palatinate couldn't come fully in. Others, Venice. Venice is partially in the war, with the ability to maybe work together with an Austrian army to work in Italy. Who knows? But most importantly, the Venetian navy will be in place here against the French. Turkey agreed to go in all out on their own, not as part of the alliance. The rest are in the alliance, but Turkey has these land claims. Now, here's something I forgot before. Crimea should have been in that war against Austria. Now, it's an expeditionary corps, which means just one stack. The problem is they couldn't get them through Poland, but I could have shipped them across or something. But they should have been involved simply because the way Turkey's alliance is being called into war works is a little different from everyone else's. They make one roll for an entire group, and the European group includes these and Crimea, I believe. I don't know. Anyway, Crimea is definitely in this one and well poised to be very dangerous to the Poles. What else do we have? Well, that's about it. I mean, a lot of the nations, also in the diplomacy, we saw the French, the only ones to spend money on a diplomatic action. They got the Prussians up to military alliance level, which means that Prussia on the next turn can maybe join into this war. And they'll be a serious threat for Saxony and Austria, if no one else. No one else had the cash to bring anyone in, which is kind of a pity. If the English had the cash and a decent leader, they would have liked to bring Holland into this. They were poised to have Holland enter the war before, and that would be a major, major addition to their situation. But the English king is so bad, with a 6, it just seemed like such a risk. At $100, you'd get this +4, +5 to the die roll. But at $30, you get nothing, so you might just be throwing money away. And the English didn't want to do that. They've got a whole navy to build again. And now without Portugal and without Sweden's help and their navies, they're at a big disadvantage against the French. And this is exactly the situation they didn't want. One thing I forgot to mention in the events is that England also got the trigger for the Hanoverian alliance, which is going to mean that when this king dies, and that's slated to happen on turn 52. And this is a little weird, right? I mean, this is still a child, I think. Now, it just came out of childhood. But we know that the English dynasty is over, and that it's going into Hanoverian hands. And that's going to cause an actual dynastic crisis, even though the Act of Succession prevents that in general. For this particular event, it's fitted in. So we're going to have a German king on the English throne, as historically happened, but we absolutely know this has to happen. There has to be a dynastic crisis, and that there's going to be this problem. That's a little funky to my knowledge, but whatever. Maybe he's the last of the line is known to be sterile or something. Who knows? All right. Anyway. On we go into the administrative stuff, and this one may take more than one video. Well, I haven't been terribly well, and I kind of dragged out the economic phase for this, 17-15 turn a little longer than I wanted. I think I'm a couple of days late on it or whatever. Anyway, just having trouble trying to play. Just definitely unwell, as I mentioned. One of the things we're seeing, this war was not the optimal time for a war for the alliance, but they do not want to give France the advantage of the Polish king if they can help it. All they have to do is cause Poland to drop out of the war through a separate peace perhaps, or to get a peace with France that's less than a level 3 peace in France's favor. Anything less than that, they're able to prevent this from happening. Of course, they'd like to gain positive peace levels on France. If they can get a level 3 peace level on either France or on Poland alone, which is kind of tough. I mean, with the separate peace modifier, it's particularly difficult, then they get away okay. But the problem is Russia is involved in their war with Astrakhan, doesn't have a whole lot of cash, they're a weak power. Austria just sent all their money that they produced this turn to the French. That's great for the French. The French were able to build up their navy and their army and everything else. Of course, they still don't have enough themselves to really face everything. They had to hire a mercenary leader who replaced one of their French leaders, their lowest ranked French leader they sent out to join the Poles. There was only one mercenary available. They were the only people interested in it, really. The English were vaguely interested, but not enough to bid on it. Basically, mercenary leaders don't tend to be good. So if you have an army that you want to operate with that's not big enough, that doesn't have a leader, then you want to pay for one, and that was the case with the French, but nobody else really was in that position. Austrians have 2 operating armies, but one of them is just a normal straight-up army. Saxons are up to an army plus. That'll help the Austrians a little bit. You've got the worry of Prussia coming into the war later. You've got things like the Palatinate, which are going to be helpful for the alliance as well. And you have Lorraine building up fortifications to try to prevent that annexation that France can cause if they get their peace. But even France doesn't have enough armies because they've got one sitting here in Ireland. They've got one over in the North Americas, which they don't really intend to gain much from here, but if they can win that battle, that's great. But they have to deal with this rebellion here, so they've got an army back there for that, and they have to deal with this Lorraine and maybe Palatinate issue down here. And then they've got the Austrians themselves. Poland is not strong enough, probably, to handle what it's facing in terms of Austria and Russia. England's in this war. Well, they joined because of the miners they might bring, but they didn't bring them in the first turn at least. But England's going to tie down this French army. It can't just sail out of there. And the English have built up a whole new navy. Now, the French also built one up, but we're going to see a replay of those naval wars. And the French are having to pull some of their privateering admirals, in this case, Dougie Thomas, is, yeah, I have no idea how that's pronounced, is pulled out of privateering because he's such a good leader and he's the ranking French leader right now. So I kind of want him in play, not just as a privateer. But we've still got Rook, who's fairly solid himself. He just doesn't have the maneuverability. Let's see, what else? I don't know. Oh, the Turks. So the Turks are sort of the... You'd think they're going to hurt Poland, but the truth of the matter is they're probably not. All they're going to do is because they're not in this war, the French are willing to let the Turks and the Crimeans do what they like. So they're going to be here at an opportunity to try to gain territories. And you might see Turkish growth down here. Now that's bad news for things like Austria and especially Russia, who want that want that Polish territory added to them and aren't going to be happy to see Turkish expansion in that area. It's especially bad for Russia because if Turkey can connect up to the Crimea, that indicates that the Turkish ally is going to be much harder to attack. If the Turks have to sail troops into the Crimea, it becomes a much, much tougher thing, which is why the Astrakhan area was left alone, really. Anyway, this is going to be a long video. That's life. I'll probably have to divide it into 2. So I'm going to load this one up and start the rounds. If the rounds are short, it'll be a short video, but that's life.